This is one of the most beautiful games of chess that's ever been played, and that's not an exaggeration. It's known as the Polish Immortal game. It was played in Warsaw by Miguel Najdorf. He was a Polish-Argentinian grandmaster. He was originally from Poland and then moved to Argentina, settled there, stayed there to the end of his days when World War II broke out. Now, this game is really high accuracy. 96% in the year 1928. The year's an interesting one though. So Garry Kasparov puts it at 1928. Chessgames.com puts it at 1929. Some sources, according to Wiki, put it in the 30s. So there's some debate there on that one. Either way, it was a hell of a long time ago. Now with the white pieces, we see this player Glucksberg, even his name is disputed apparently, and this is crushingly over in just 22 moves with 4 minor pieces sacrificed for the attacking side. Let's see this beautiful game. So d4 on the board, f5 played, this is the Dutch defense, c4, knight f6, knight c3 played, e6 from black, and now knight to f3 gives black a couple of options here. Now you commonly see bishop to b4 these days. If you get this opportunity to pin this knight, chop it off, well, it gives extra control of this e4 square, which we can see black is playing for through this opening. But in this one, we get d5 played. Now this is called the Stonewall Dutch. You're setting up this solid stone wall of pawns. c6 is coming soon. But it does kill this bishop, so there are some downsides to this. You also weaken the pawn, weaken the king long term. And now we see e3 from white, not the most precise. You usually see bishop f4 or bishop g5 these days, bringing the bishop outside the pawn chain, not hemming it in. c6 was played, bishop d3, bishop d6, both players castle. And now here again, white plays a move which isn't necessarily positionally sound in a classical sense. So knight to e2 played. It's actually one of the top engine moves, but the most common move there is pawn to b3, simply preparing to develop this bishop which is still stuck at home. Now when you go knight e2, you move the same piece twice, and that's a risky policy in the opening. Now we had knight b to d7, and here white once again does the same thing. b3 is best, just develop that c1 bishop. But knight g5 was played, so for a second time, a piece is moved twice in the opening, a no-no, recipe for disaster. Can you already see the tactical shot for black here to take advantage of this? So the move played is bishop takes on h2, classic sacrifice. Now this one wasn't taken, the king sidestepped. If you take, then the follow-up is knight g4 check, king goes, and then the queen takes. As soon as you check, you've uncovered that queen, and there's a big attack coming down the h-file, sometimes the rook lifts, etc. So we had king h1 instead, but knight g4 comes anyway, protecting that bishop, opening the queen here, whoops, misfire, opening the queen, and if the knight now chops, well, the queen comes down onto this h-file, and yeah, you're winning a rook, but so what? You're about to get mated. If you try g3, well, we just capture, discovered check, again, the king's getting mated. So we had f4 played in this position instead, just holding that knight on g5, and now queen e8. Nice transfer of the queen over to that h-file. Again, same attacking ideas against the king. So g3 was played. Idea, give the king some room on g2. Queen h5, king g2. And now here there are different moves for black. We had the nicest one, the prettiest, the most stunning from Miguel Najdorf. What do you think he played, and how would you play, I guess, is a question in this position. So the move Najdorf plays is bishop to g1. I'll show that in a second. But if you took on c4, preparing after bishop captures to then go knight f6, also a good move. Or you can start with knight f6 coming in here. But this one's really nice because you clear this h2 square for the queen. The whole idea is you want to just bring that queen down. Now this can be captured 3 ways: king, rook, and knight. If you go with the king, this is the easiest to refute, mate in 1. If you go with the rook, then we've got mate in 2, like this. If you come back here, same thing. And if you go with the knight, this is what we see in the game, Well, then there's check anyway, king to f3, but we've hit a problem. You can't now check from f2 because the rook covers the square. So how do you continue the attack? And this is where the brilliance of this game really starts to kick in. So how do you bring the firepower in? What would you play here? So the move that gets played is pawn to e5. Now this pawn can be captured in two different ways with two different pawns. Obviously e4 check is a big threat. That would even be mate after the pieces all take off, or you're losing a ton of material anyway. So you have to take. We see captures with this one. If you go with the f pawn, same thing. We're now chopping with check, pawn recaptures, and then we take again. And the idea is we're driving this king out because the queen chops this rank, the pawns control this squares, so king f4 is forced. And now again, how do you follow up? How do you keep going? Well, you're two minor pieces down, so you really have to find forcing continuations here. And that's why knight to g6 check really lends itself. You have to keep going. King f3 is forced. And now again, how do we throw more fuel into the fire here? There's really only one obvious way, and that's pawn to f4. You have to keep this queen chopping the king, and this move is just designed to now rip open the f-file here. So again, you can capture this pawn in two different ways. We see the e-pawn capturing here. If you take with the f-pawn, this is the easiest to refute. You can checkmate the king in two different ways. One is knight h4 check, and the second is knight e5 check. The pawn is pinned by that rook. Obviously you can't step here. Queen cuts, knight covers here, and bishop as well even. So that's just dead in the water. This one captures. But why isn't this checkmate? Same again. Well, this time when you took with the e-pawn, you vacated the e3 square. The king can run. This is actually better for white now, +2. You do have to tread carefully. So now, what's the final brilliant follow-up move played by Najdorf to seal this game? So the move he played here is bishop to g4 check. Really stunning stuff, just bringing that king up the board. If you try and step here, which is your only other legal move other than taking the bishop, well then we win the queen and the attack rages on, overwhelming for black. So the king captured, and now what's the final follow-up move? Well, the thing is, you want to get this pawn h5 check, but the king can then come back to f3. So how do you cover that f3 retreat square? Well, here comes that knight, back with a vengeance, knight e5 check. Now the king can't step back, it can't come up here, so taking is forced, and now you've opened the f-file. You stop the king from stepping back, bang. This pawn move finished the game on the spot. What a stunning game, 4 minor pieces down, yet checkmating the king. I hope you enjoyed this brilliant game, and if you want to see another fascinating game played at very high accuracy, check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.